Okay. Namaskar, Adab, Sat Sri Akal. On behalf of Indian Classical Music Circle, I heartily welcome you all to Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb Memorial Event, which is being hosted for 2 consecutive days, 21st and 22nd of November. The name of Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb does not need any introduction. His enormous contribution in Indian classical music as musician, performer, guru, composer, collaborator, preserver, and propagator of the great tradition and heritage in its purest form is remembered with great reverence and gratitude. As part of this memorial event, ICMC is extremely fortunate and blessed and honored to have the finest musicians of instrumental music of India. They are not only the sons and disciples of the legendary Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb, but also are the leading exponents of the premier lineage of instrumental music of India. Now, we are having our first interactive session with none other than the world-renowned sitar maestro Ustad Nishat Khan Saheb. Ustad ji, heartily welcome. I heartily welcome you in this session, and this will be this will be a conversation with Hidayat Husain Khan ji, our Hidayat Bhaiya. Ustad ji and Bhaiya, heartiest welcome to you both on behalf of ICMC. And by now, ICMC has been your own place, so we will listen what you want to say, Ustad ji.
That's great. It's such a pleasure to be here today, and again, talking on this blog. It's fantastic because what you're doing is wonderful, and it's lovely to be part of this. As I said earlier, that it's very. I feel kind of afraid and kind of very aware of the fact that I'm going to be talking about my guru and my father. So it's a particular kind of emotion one has when you talk about your guru, but I think it's a great thing that the world also needs to know some of his immense qualities that he had, and we are just going to celebrate his day today. So it's very, very good. So for those who may not know very much about Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb, that he was born in 1935, and he was Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb's son. He's the sixth generation. Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb's younger brother, and then he was playing Sitar and the Surbahar, which is the larger instrument of the sitar, which was also an invention in the family from Ustad Hidayat Khan Saheb time, my great grandfather. And so Imrat Khan Saheb had an incredible life of music. So just to say a few things, one of the most distinctive things about him was that he was in music all the time. So he would spend all his day literally doing sitar or something with the sitar, or singing, or doing a composition, or teaching us, and of course, playing himself all the time. He was very involved in music. And when I say, all musicians are, and I think this is the thing about musicians that keeps us going, and that is our life, because music life, that's what you call music life. But with him, I have only heard these things. His life was mainly like he would wake up and have his cup of tea and go to the drawing room, and he would play you would take the sitar out and sit with the sitar and make a little small talk, and then or already he had a composition in his head, or already he had an idea. He was already thinking about something while in the night when he was not sleeping. You know, and he would come in the morning and he would sit with the sitar, maybe do a little bit of the strings and how it was sounding. So look at that. And then he would start to play. So it was almost like having the tea and the breakfast together with that. And then he would start playing, and then he was already in the music. So music would happen before lunch, and then there was rest, and then music would happen after in the evening, and then all the time. So this was a regular setup, wherever he was in the world. And uh, he, I mean, it's I sort of thought that I'll tell you in section by section about things, but when you talk about someone that I've spent so much time with, and learned and studied, and he's my father. So his other qualities, some of the qualities that were very distinctive about him, that he had he was teaching you also all the time as he was going along. So I would have my talim from him in the mornings. There was no particular time setup. The talim was happening around the clock. Or talking about music, he would talk a lot about his older brother, Ustad Hidayat Khan Saheb. He would talk a lot about his grandfather, and that is his mother's father. He would talk a lot about his father a lot, and so it depended on what subject it was. He would do it. Also, he had a very kind of a character, which was a very friendly also, but at the same time, everyone knows he was also very strict as a teacher, and it was like he was a very, very strict teacher. So that's another episode. We will talk. But there was strict, perfection. He was a perfectionist in that something had to happen. You had to play it right. You had to play it a lot, and you had to practice a lot. And extremely encouraging. When I talk about music, then there was a whole way of looking at life, because he would talk about many other great masters. He would talk about his situation of his life. He would talk about episodes with his brothers. He would talk about his own experiences of his travel and his performances, and reference to everything in the musical life. And that's how. And this was all between the talim, so you would get a whole picture of the world of music. So um, his very distinctive style of playing. He developed this style of playing over the years, because our gharana, everybody has such a trademark. Everybody had like my grandfather, my great grandfather, my great great grandfather, my uncle, and then my father. He wanted to have his own sound. He had his own way of shawari. He developed his own idea of how the sitar should be in keeping with developing the Gandhar Pancham style, but he also um, he he made sure that his sound was different from the other people in the gharana. So he used a certain kind of tone, and you can see that tone of his sitar throughout his life. Uh, he had his own concept of music completely. So his concept of music, when I say, he was a great traditionalist, but he was a great expansionist also in that tradition. He was very, he was his expansion of the rags, and the way he made his bandishes, and the kind of his bandishes that he wanted to make different from from the other bandishes which were in the family. uh, and obviously, I mean, we are all influenced, and because he studied from his brother also. He studied from mostly from his Hidayat Khan Saheb, and then he also studied from uh, you know uh, his uncle. He studied Surbahar, um, but also he studied from his uh, maternal uh, uh, grandfather, Ustad Hasan Khan Saheb, and from his uncle. So this was happening all the time, and very particularly of the Surbahar, the Surbahar talim was very particular, but that talim was also expanded because he was also, because of his link to Drupad through his maternal grandfather. So whatever there was, the talim of the family, he expanded that, and with his own imagination, with his own experience, with his own musicality, with his own creativity, and with his own gift. He expanded that a lot in his life, and he kept with playing, his own style of creating his bandishes. तो वो जैसे like his durud bandishes, his Vilampat bandishes, they were slightly different, and he used a lot of the right hand bowls in his playing, as much more at his time. And he like I said, that he made his own style of doing bandishes, and his stance, and his way of looking at, and his approach of the rag, his approach of the bandishes, his approach of the composition. So that was one part. Then he also, he was very intelligent in the way he structured his performances. Now, this is something very interesting, because he would play a lot in most his life. He played a lot in the West, and from the beginning, well, playing in India, the performances are, in a certain way, it's structured, and what the sort of rag, the choice of rags, and the same time, he was like, if he was playing Bhageshri, he would play Aram se do dhai ghanta, like he would play there or here. But he wanted to give different rang, different colors in his performance. So he would structure his performance in a certain way also. Now that brings me to a very interesting trivia. Okay. So he loved playing tals, different tals. And so he actually started doing a lot of research in Laikari within Tal. So he was already playing different Tals, but he did a lot of research in the expansion of those Tals, and what he would play and how he would present those Tals. And you can see that in the way he does his Laikari within these Tals, like Rupa Kinchap Tal or Ek Tal, or Dhamar, that he's got so many bandishes he has in that. So he was the first person in our family who actually started playing tals outside, and he was, and he loved, there was a time that he would play that a lot, and all his life he played different bandishes that he would make in tals, There are some very beautiful bandishes that he has. It was extremely lyrical. So it was the bandishes were not ke chalo theek hai ye rupak hai to isme सात मात्रे होते तो यहाँ से उठा के इसको उसके बीच में उसको बना देते हैं. वो जो बंदिशें बनाते थे, the bandishes that he would make, like the compositions he would make, and they were extremely lyrical, and they flowed beautifully with his mind, and he always brought something new within those bandishes. And he is revolutionary in a way of the kind of bandishes he has made on sitar. The bandish means compositions, for those who don't know, I'm using this word a lot. So he had a very distinctive style of compositions as well. He was very in a way challenged when he was making these compositions. So he would think, how do I give something new? How do I bring some different aspects of this to make it completely something like a unique thing? So he made the style of composition. He was actually responsible of his time for the kind of influence he had on some of the musicians, of the kind of compositions he has made. So from tals to compositions, like he made when he made that composition of his Kalavati Rag, he had made a composition, and this was offbeat composition. At that time, it was supposed to be something completely new idea. And I think you have a recording of that, so maybe you want to play a bit of that. Yeah.
Okay, let me play that recording. Yes.
Is it going on?
Yeah. Yes.
This is great. So
Yes.
So when you see this is that when he made this composition, this was a revolutionary composition because it was completely on offbeat. It went. And like this, and you see within 2 minutes, those who play the sitar, see, this is another thing I wanted to say. His style, in a way, it was so difficult because he was also playing Surbahar. And so that Surbahar style he brought into sitar. And within this composition, within 2.5 minutes, you can see those for the sitar players, you can see that he's already done so many technicalities which are so difficult,
Right.
and he's done it so easily, you know. So this was an amazing amazing quality about him, that he would play a very difficult style, but with great ease, and he had practiced it so much that he also showed you that it was very difficult, but with great ease and panache, he would do that, you know. Now,
निशात भाई, मुझे एक अब्बा की एक बात याद आ रही है, और एक फीलिंग, एक्चुअली इट्स नॉट इवन अ बात, कि यू नो आई हार्डली स्पेंड एनी टाइम विद पापा, लेकिन जो अब्बा से एक फीलिंग मिली उनके बारे में, that without a doubt I will say that Abba's first love was his younger brother. And in the duet recordings that they have played, and in the stories, and in the way he would talk about him and everything, there was no doubt in my mind that his first love was his younger brother. And yet there was so much admiration, and इनकी अभी उनका ये क्या सुभान अल्लाह, क्या कटाव है इस गत में, और क्या उनका एक पर्सनालिटी एक नजर आती है. लेकिन जितना मैंने टाइम उनके साथ जो स्पेंड थोड़ा बहुत उनको देखा, there was a very mischievous side to him also, ना?
It's true.
And उनकी म्यूजिक में भी it's amazing that उनकी म्यूजिक में there is so much गंभीरनेस and there's so much depth. But then there was so much mischievousness also in his music, and it's visible in this piece of music that when you hear.
Yes, and it's almost like look what I have, and see what I can do, but in a very like a tongue-in-cheek thing, you know.
Absolutely.
It was very, so talking about this now, I'll tell you something, another trivia which is really really remarkable. So he made the smallest bandish, the smallest composition in an instrument, in instrumental music of India, and in a mukhra, in two matras, a gat in two matras, and that is the gat in Gauti. Then two beats is the gat. Now, what is really remarkable about this is that within two matras, you see the revelation of the rag, you see the tal, and you see how that bandish forms and how it flows within the continuing of the other 14 beats. So maybe I think you have that. Do you have that?
Yeah.
So
yes,
maybe we can play. We'll just play quickly.
Yes. Just the composition. Just couple of
in Rag
cycles.
Gauti. This is in Rag Gauti, and this is a bandish he made in 1967.
Wow.
That was 1967. So you can see, incredible. So you see, his sitar was very much for sitar players as well, and his musicality was for all the great musicians who were present at that time. Because you see, that was a time when people actually, there were great musicians around. First of all, his older brother was there, who was a landmark for him. And when he made something, he played something, he always was very aware that Bhaiya is also going to listen to this, and I want Bhaiya to appreciate what I'm doing, So that was a very, very big landmark. So every time he would do something new, he would do something very unique, he would play that, and it was in reverence to his older brother, to his father, because he knew all the compositions his father had made, his grandfather, and so he wanted to leave his own mark in the world of music, that what he was doing. Plus, there was a lot of innovations going on at that time, and this was the 1960s, 50s, 40s, and the golden era of classical Indian music, as they call it. Great musicians were performing all the time, and there were a lot of concerts, and there was a lot of stuff that was happening at this. So now, playing Abhogi Kannada on Surbahar, बहुत मुश्किल राग है, बहुत मुख्तसर राग है, लेकिन बहुत बड़ा राग भी है. So he had played Abhogi Kannada, which is like, the movement of Chalan, and the movement of the rag is very, very particular, very unique, very difficult to play. He played on Surbahar, then he played Gauti on sitar. He would play Kalavati on sitar, which had only 4, like 5-note rags. He played Asavari. So he had his own concept of rags, which was different from other people in the family, and he would play most of his own of these rags that he had.
निशात भाई, उनकी जो compositions की बात कर रहे थे आप, बंदिशों की बात, तो उनकी बंदिशें, did he have lyrics also? Like वो या गत पे सितार पे ही बनाते थे, या उस पे lyrics भी होती थी उनकी बंदिशों में?
He had made some great compositions with lyrics. Yeah. तो उन्होंने ख्याल बनाए, बहुत ख्याल बनाए. उनके हैं कुछ. तो गाउती में भी एक उनका बहुत खूबसूरत बना हुआ है, और दूसरे रागों में भी है. Then he had created rags as well. He had created some rags, like Madhuranjani is one of his creations, which is one of the popular creations he had made. And then my brothers will tell you more about the other rags that he had made. So, but so he was also creating rags, and then he would play it. And in fact, that bandish is also very beautiful in Madhuranjani,
एक इमरत खोज भी सुना उनसे, एक इमरत खोज भी उनसे सुना, और एक दफा या 2 दफा उनसे काम्बोजी सुना, जो ध्रुपद एक्सपोनेंट्स जनरली रेंडर, काम्बोजी भी उनसे सुना. So totally different zone.
Exactly. But very lyrical, and in his own way, very, very, very beautiful. His bandish in his composition in Rupak in and Rageshri is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. तो ऐसे उन्होंने compositions बनाए, ऐसी बंदिशें बनाई, and he played them with great with great love and great affection, because
compositions में when you were talking about he learned from his uncles also. Uncle meaning even his mamu, Zinda Husain Khan Saheb?
Yes.
जी.
Uncle means mamu. Yes, absolutely. So Imrat Khan Saheb से बहुत तालीम हुई इनको. I mean, he learned a lot from him, and there were months and months when the Dada used to come and stay, and then he was going also when they met, and in his childhood, in fact, both the Bade Abba, my uncle, and my father, they both had very extensive talim from Ustad Imrat Husain Khan Saheb, who was a great singer, their uncle. And then back to my father, I mean, he also introduced a lot of tabla players, like
he himself
for
played
people.
tabla, right?
Not particularly. I mean, he loved the tabla. He could play the tabla. I mean, but not. He was not a great tabla player, but he played tabla because he liked it so much. But he introduced to the world, at large. I mean, he introduced Latif Ahmad Khan, Saheb. He introduced him. Then he introduced Mahapurush Mishra ji, and then of course Kumar Bose. He introduced Kumar Bhai, and so he did that also, and he was a great composer. So he was working in films, doing compositional music, and he had several films that he composed for, and in fact with Satyajit Babu he did two films, and one of them was Jalsa Ghar, and of course with Ismail Merchant, and so he was very good at placements, because he loved cinema. I think I got this from him. His love for cinema was immense, and he loved seeing movies, and so he had a great idea for soundtrack and how it should be and what should be and what kind of music goes where, and with his own dimension of music, he introduced that in films. And when he worked with my uncle also in that Satyajit Babu's film, you can see that. I had extensive conversations with Satyajit Babu, and it said very many beautiful things of that time. I think that is there anything you wanted to ask about?
जरूर. So if you can उनकी अगर कोई एक बंदिश अगर आप थोड़ा सा गा के सुना दें, it'll be great for the audience to hear a little bit from you.
अब तो ये तो तुमने ये पापा की बंदिश तो सब जानते ही हैं,
Okay, if I can, yeah.
You can what?
आप कुछ बोल रहे थे राम भाई?
हाँ, तो उनका बजाने में जो एक कॉम्पैक्टनेस था, लाइक एक सिलसिला और एक कॉम्पैक्टनेस, उसके बारे में अगर आप ये होने के बाद थोड़ा अगर आप बताएं कि अबाउट दैट, लाइक द कनेक्शन बिटवीन द फ्रेजेस, एंड जैसे लगता था कि एक नोट दूसरे नोट के साथ हाथ बांध के ऐसे. So
look, he was very keen on maintaining the authenticity of the chalans and of the old chalans of different rags. Mm-hmm. So he would follow a certain pattern of the chalan, which is a very, very thing of our family as well. But the way he used to do it, that he would actually expand on those chalans, and he would follow a code of conduct of an alap, which is done, say, in a Dhurpad style. He would do that. And of course, he was also playing, very much in the khayalang, or very much in, the lyrical way of playing, of improvising of various notes as you go through the rag. But he followed a certain pattern, and it was in every rag he did that. If you hear Shri on Surbahar, for example, do you have that clip? Maybe you want to play that?
Yeah. Okay.
भैया मैं कॉल पे हूँ अभी, मत करो, मैं डिस्टर्ब मत करो।
क्या बात है। वाह।
हाँ हाँ हाँ।
हाँ,
तो अब आप ये देखिए,
क्या बात
he takes you in this world of Shri.
है। And what a
जैसे कि श्री
beautiful world
सामने
it
हाथ
is.
जोड़, श्री सामने हाथ जोड़ी खड़ी है, you know.
हाँ, what
और
a
एक
beautiful
you are
world.
in this world you are, and he draws you in this alap of Shri, and the chalan and the movement of the rag और कुछ सुरों के साथ वो खेल रहे हैं और पंचम से काम सब हो रहा है ज्यादातर देख लो those who play sitar or surbahar they it's very very big an important place here that they should understand that this is all happening from pancham from pa और उसी एरिया में काम हो रहा है it's only in that area it's working वो सारा खरज का काम और आलाप का काम अभी he has not left that area and it's already now we are into 4 minutes of a recording of
And
the
he was-
EMI.
And he was not allowing me to stop at any point. He reached one sa, then I was afraid of stopping that. And immediately
Exactly.
from the first stroke itself, Sri ऐसे ही आ गया.
एकदम खड़ा हो गया,
we-
सही बात.
खड़ा हो गया. हाँ? We see people sometimes struggling to pray, आइए प्रार्थना करते राग को. एक दो स्ट्रोक से उन्होंने पूरा राग को सामने ला दिया.
अच्छा फिर देखो हम लोगों के यहाँ इमदाद खान साहब के टाइम से खरज मंदिर में जो काम होता है
जी.
खरज मंदिर पे क्या काम होता है उसकी क्या म्यूजिक है फिर आप अपनी तरफ से भी आप अपने इट इज योर क्रिएटिविटी बट यू सी द वे ही हैज एक्सपैंडेड इन द खरज मंदिर एंड he takes and how he develops that's very very important to see and it's absolutely beautiful this recording is a landmark recording of his and in fact I was remembering his bandish of this which da 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 तो क्या इसको श्री को ऐसी बंदिश बनाई उस टाइम पे he made the way he approaches the antara and he उसको समेट के कैसे लाना ये बंदिशों का एक यही खूबसूरती है कि बंदिश समेटते कैसे हैं
कह रहे थे ना कि उनके कॉम्पोजिशंस में राइट हैंड के बोल बांट का एक बड़ा यूनिकनेस है अब उनकी कलावती की जो कॉम्पोजिशन सुनाई आपने एग्जैक्टली वही बात गावती के कॉम्पोजिशन में भी एग्जैक्टली वही बात और इसमें भी एग्जैक्टली वही जो एक बोल का कटाव है बड़ा खूबसूरत है एंड वेरी यूनिक
अच्छा उनके कुछ ऐसे कॉम्पोजिशंस हैं कि जो मैं अभी गा नहीं सकता मगर ऐसे जबरदस्त कॉम्पोजिशंस हैं कि वो कभी सुनाएंगे जब मिलेंगे तो सुनाएंगे क्योंकि वो ऐसे उन्होंने वो बड़ी खास चीजें वो बड़े खास लोगों के लिए वो बड़ी खास चीजें हैं जो उन्होंने उस टाइप की बंदिशें बनाई हमारे हाथ में डाला अच्छा और फिर एक उनमें उनके बजाने उनके तानकारी में एक there was he had this unique फिरत that he did एंड वो फिरत उन्होंने वो क्योंकि बचपन से फिर मुझे भी बड़ा शौक था so I because I studied with him and he gave me that फिरत and this फिरत was I mean it was unbelievable and remarkable and I'm not saying this because he was my father but this फिरत was really his forte कि कुछ सुरों को लेके कैसे फिरना है और ऊपर नीचे कैसे फिरना है उसका कैसे बढ़त होती है फिरत की बढ़त हो रही है अब तानों में हमारे यहाँ बढ़त होती है जैसे गाने में होती है लेकिन हम लोग सितार में हम लोगों ने उसको दूसरी जगह पहुंचा दिया है I'm not shy to say that what I just said that in the tans we do the बढ़त in tans this is a very old style of our family and my uncle took it to just unimaginable perfection this बढ़त in tans
कल राम भाई और मैं 1 घंटा इसी बारे में बात कर रहे थे कि I'm sorry I'm cutting you निशात भाई but I just
not at all
say this because it means it really left such an impact on me आपका कॉन्सर्ट था बॉम्बे में NCPA में झंझोटी का और सुभान अल्लाह what a beautiful concert it was but I was telling Ram bhai that why I'm such a fan of this man I mean many reasons I mean this is also one of the reasons
very
towards the end of the concert आपने डेमोन्स्ट्रेट किया था कि परदादा इमदाद खान साहब इनायत खान साहब, विलायत खान साहब, इमरत खान साहब का क्या स्टाइल था. And I wish जो वहाँ पे लोग बैठे थे उस दिन ऑडियंस में, but they were so fortunate to have जो आपने
Why don't
5.
you just repeat that in English so that our English, because we got some comments that we had spoken part of that.
Right, I'm sorry. I'm
The
sorry. We
last,
just get carried away. Our language, you know.
how
No, what I
sweet,
was
huh?
trying to say is that within 5 minutes, how you were able to distinctly, with such clarity of thought and execution, you were able to show the distinct difference between what Imdad Khan Sahab did, what Inayat Khan Sahab did, what Vilayat Khan Sahab did, and what Imrat Khan Sahab did. Was just a magical moment, and that audience sitting over there is so fortunate to get such a clear vision
Well, that's
about that. It was just brilliant, and the vazan and the pirat that you're talking about, that you uniquely showed that how Imran Khan Sahab had this personal, which was his particular vazan and his particular way of pirat and his idea. It was just beautiful.
it was really beautiful, and it was like, what was really beautiful about my talim and my growing up with him was that uh, he gave me tremendous amount of um, tremendous amount of independence
Mhm.
in doing the creativity. So when we would play, because I would also go into areas which probably I would think, oh, this is something new, and I want to explore this part while I was playing with him. So we would play for hours. We would like Hidayat, when you would play with Abba, how it is, that you can play for hours, and this such a beautiful experience when you're sitting in one space and you're playing with your guru, and it's like a dialogue. It's like literally a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you're playing, it's literally like a conversation. It can go on and on. Okay, he's saying something, so you say something, then you say something, then he's saying something else. You're saying something of that sort of your answer, but you also put something of your own there, and the whole thing is happening. And it's not like that. It's going some. It's that there is a whole subject, that a matter that one is talking about. That's a great that's a great quality of our family. That we have this. Is anybody there? Because I can't see Ram. I hope I'm not
I
just
think
talking into space.
no, I think we're live. I think Rambhai is having some technical difficulties.
Uh,
With
okay.
technology comes these things, but I'm sure he'll log back on.
Exactly. So the idea of doing music again, and the music that we do, uh, there is always a symbolism in our music. There is always a journey, and that journey is a journey that some can see, and some can feel, and some can just make an imagination, keep an imagination that, oh, this is happening, and this would have happened, or this may have happened, or this is what they must be thinking. I mean, the players, that is.
Right.
And so he had that very, very beautiful, clear way of showing that path, and doing that in his performances.
I think, Nishat bhai, you said something that is very important, and especially in today's times, because with tradition that we revere so much, somehow it's become that a guru says something and a student should never ask questions. Especially the West feels like our Eastern culture doesn't allow us to ask questions, but you're obviously stating the complete opposite, where you said he let you be himself. He had conversations, forget questions, he had conversations with you, and all speaking in a musical dynamic. So
Yeah.
so him as a teacher, um, uh, how did he approach his students? How did he approach you? How was he able to cultivate influence your mind into a certain direction, into looking at things in a
But
certain way?
the thing is this. I mean, with different people, different things. But he was always a very affectionate person. Very, very, those who knew him, he had a great sense of humor. He was extremely affectionate. he was extremely disciplined in music, and he wanted that, to discipline you in
Even
that you
in
should have
personal
that.
life, right? He did yoga, meditation, all of that, even in personal life.
Exactly. Yeah. He did yoga and meditation himself, and he was a great philosopher. He spoke very, very beautifully, and he spent a lot of time, doing. He was very, also he did things on his own, like he was a lot with himself, and he spent a lot of time, like I said, playing music and internalizing, a lot of his own things. He had his own concept of life. He was extremely glamorous at the time, but like all his life, he loved good clothes, and that runs in the family. So he had his own, again, he had his own style, because
Yes, very
remember,
unique to him.
he was in England in the 1960s.
Uh-huh.
And there's a very famous story that George Harrison wanted to present him in a TV program, and he said, "Thank you, but I don't have anything I know to do with pop music, so it will be the wrong place to go, wrong program for me to be on." That was his concept of that time. That was his life. That was the way he thought. And today we think in different ways. We collaborate with Western people, Western musicians, but he was like that. And in the 1960s, he was in England. He was, and so he was going through that time of the 1960s fashion and the 1960s life, and he was in London in the best areas. He lived in beautiful apartments, and he was driving a beautiful new Mercedes he had bought. He loved that. He loved cars, and so he had that part to himself as well. But the beauty of this, I would love to say to you, and this is something very beautiful that Papa gave us, to recognize the simplicity of life and the purity of life. So the fact is that we had everything, and he had everything, but he was the simplest man. He loved to just be in a simple environment. He dressed very simply when he was at home, and very, very simple life. He had a concept of life, and he had this very spiritual side of him, that he was very simple in the way that he looked at things. Completely uncomplicated person. He never did any politics with anybody or with any musicians. He was not into politics of what you have to do in music. Put him down, take him up. Don't do that. Get him on. Don't get him. He never did all that stuff. He was totally into making new compositions, and many compositions he has made in his life. Many of them, and this was all he used to do. And and great sense of humor and great sense of dedication to music. So his life was completely and always dedicated in music.
Yeah,
I can go on and on and on and on, and my brothers will speak. They will have their own stories to say. There is a book coming out of his also, and I hope there will be some interesting stories there. There are so many different aspects of his life that in a go, because I did not, because I've been traveling last few days, I did not really make points, but I wanted to say the important things. I think we have discussed of some of his very important and beautiful achievements. And I'm really very privileged to do this. Ram, do you have? I think you were going to ask something.
No, actually, I lost the internet connection for some time, so I missed few points, and probably I will watch this again because of my internet connectivity. I was lost.
But others have also missed this. What we were talking about in between.
No. Everyone has been able to watch. No problems from that. Yes.
So it's so beautiful That I feel the same way, because when you have a father who's your guru also, so there's a lot of reverence, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of respect, and to hear stories about musical like intricacies of such depth, and personal stories, and personal information coming from you, about your father, about your guru, about your inspiration, is so beautiful, and it's inspirational for the generation. And
I'll just tell you just one thing before I go, okay? So this was 1975. 1975. 75. Yes, it was 1975. And we were really scared of our father. I mean, I was very scared of him. I mean, I got a lot of love and affection from him as well. But when it came to music, it was like there was no compromise, and there was very strict a way of looking at things, and he wanted me to do well, and my talim was all the time when he was there, because he would travel, he was away a lot for months and months. But when he would come, my talim was like a constant cycle. So it was happening 24 hours, except for when I was sleeping. However, so what happened was I was not very naughty in school, and I used to go to South Point School at that time. I was in South Point, and so the teacher who would come home every morning, like I would have the tuition, and when Papa's mood was not so great in the mornings, he was not a morning person, okay? So if you had to be very careful when it was only my mother who would manage him the first thing in the morning. He was kind of, very quiet, and then until he had his breakfast, it was. So what happened was, my teacher who was teaching me Rumadi, she was very close to him, and she would always come and say good night, hello, and Papa was always cordial with everybody else at that time in the day, but except his near and dear loved ones. So Rumadi went into the room and she said, Ustad ji, I have to tell you something very, very, this thing, Nishat is really, he's being very naughty, and he's not paying any attention to studies and this and that, and he's just, doing whatever he's doing. His mind is not there. And so I could see his expression completely change. He used to have this 3 or 4 fried eggs in the morning with toasts, So he loved that. So he was having a fried egg on toast, and this Rumadi was standing there, and she was complaining to him, and his expression was, he said, "Acha ami dekhchi, I'm going to see. Okay, so then I said, okay, today I'm dead, but you only die once, So I walked into the room with a lot of conviction, and very serious, and a lot of conviction, and all my courage that I could gather, and I said, I don't want to go to school anymore. And this was in 1975. And he looked up. He was because I had never spoken to him. You never speak. So like that. So he was having his breakfast. He looked up at me, and I said, okay, so this is your last moment of life, Nishat. and he looked up and he said, okay, go to that room and sit down, and I'm just coming. And so I said, okay, so no. So those moments, you can imagine, my God, what's going to happen now? So everything was coming in my head. And anyway, after a very long interval, of this torment and suffering, he came into the room and he sat down and he said, you don't want to go to school? So I said, no. So he said, so this is the first thing, what he said. He said, if you don't want to go to school, what are you going to do at the time that you're supposed to be in school? So I said, I'll play sitar. I want to play sitar. So he said, okay. It was that simple and that easy. He said, okay, if you don't go to school, then you have to play sitar the time that you were going to be in school. Do you, ye manzoor hai? He said, is it acceptable? And I said, yes. Little did I know that I had, what I had undertaken. But it was that simple. He said, okay, fine. You're not going to school from tomorrow. And then I played sitar every, the time I was supposed to be in school, and then, the rest is history. But this is the sort of person he was. He understood things from the core of his heart. And there are so many different stories about so many, different things, and his connection to his brother, and beautiful love and affection
Nishad,
and
before you
respect
go,
and reverence that he had for his brother.
yeah.
There was some absolutely unbelievable
Before
affection.
you go, Nishad bhai, you mentioned this, and there's no one I want to hear this from than other than you. Please tell us about the duet recordings that Abba and Papa did together. Just
Oh my God!
yeah,
So beautiful.
yeah.
I mean, look, these recordings of these duets. Thank you for asking this lovely question, Hidayat. I think this is beautiful. I'll see. The words are not enough to describe this, but yeah, because we have very little time right now. The thing is that those who know music, those who don't know music, those who listen to music because everybody has their own relationship to music, and we all interact, and we listen to music in our own way, and we feel music in our own way, we accept music in our own way. There are people who know about music because Indian classical music is a very particular kind of study. So you have to know about music. When you learn music, you understand that music. But then there are connoisseurs of music who just love music, and they listen to music for the sake of good music. Now, when you listen to the duet of these people, of Ustad Hidayat Khan Saheb and Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb, when you listen to the records together, they're literally those, and this is a reaction that I've had from people that have heard that music for the first time in their lives. People are completely immersed and drawn in and have an emotional experience of a lifetime when they listen to these records. But when you see these records, when you see them perform together, it's like two souls in one body. I think I said it the opposite way. It's like two bodies in one soul. And it's so beautiful. It's like it's just one soul and two bodies, and they are speaking a language. Musically, I mean, those who know music, they can see the beauty and the poetry in this incredible intellect, which, for example, if you see Malhar, how they start how they start developing the little alap they did before the Vilampat comes in, and the way they intertwine their music. The placement even of the chikari, the placement even of the jola and the kharaj is very well thought of. It's coming it's such a gift that is coming in this way. And then you listen to Chani Kedar, how they develop in 22 minutes of each side, how they did the alap, and the balance of this. One can go and talk for hours. And you see, this was because they were both sons of Inayat Khan Saheb. They came from a particular bloodline, and they really respected that aspect. So sometimes in life, people can have different, we all are different humans, right? We are different souls. We can have our own ideas, and we should have our own ideas. We can have agreements and disagreements. We can have our own opinions about things. We have our own personalities. But when it comes to music, there is somewhere in the concept of the rag and the music itself where we travel together in one space. And this is what both these brothers did, So I hope that people who have, heard these things. And Papa always, like because he loved his brother so much, he always, there was not a single time that I had a talim from him, not a single day that he did not mention in some reference or the other his brother, and and then he would also give the references of his forefathers and what he did. And the great thing was that, in the way he played, the heights that he took Surbahar to, that instrument, giving it such an distinctive sound of his, and I keep saying, using the word distinctive because it is true that he very deliberately he created a sound that was very much his. And like, for example, when you hear a Shri, or when you hear in that recording, and if you hear any other recording, you will see there is a whole world of the sound of the Surbahar that he actually explores while he's doing it. And that world he's already explored before also, so he wants to take you there. So he's taking you there as well, where he has visited before, and he likes to remember that beauty. And at the same time, he comes and he explores new worlds in that. And it is, what is really remarkable is that his ideas that he has in his head, he takes you so easily in that, and with the technique he developed. So there was a beautiful musicality he had, and great, unique person, unique artist. And what else? I mean, he's created some outstanding musicians in his lifetime.
Exactly. Continues.
He was a great teacher, and his way of doing talim was excellent. I tell you, it was from the simplest thing that he could explain to you, some most complex thing he could explain simply, and you are already in that world doing something.
Ustadji, we need to have a second episode of this. This one episode is not enough. We have to do a series, kind of web series on Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb.
Zarur. Listen, so lovely to talk to you all, and Hidayat, so lovely to see you, and I'm so lovely to talk. We will talk soon.
Inshallah. And thank you so much.
And thank you to
as always.
Thank you to the listeners for. It's great. We have to celebrate his life and his birthday, and it's wonderful that we are doing this. And
one thing I'm for sure right now, the heavens are listening to some fantastic music.
It's true. Both of them.
The heavens are blessed, actually.
doing a jugalbandi of Sitar and Surbahar up there, of course.
I bet you they are.
Yeah. Well, all the best.
Thank you. Thank you for such beautiful words. Really.
Love to the listeners. My love to the listeners. Okay.
Thank you.
Ram bhai.
Gee, we are already late, so I think we have to continue.
I know. Gee,
so it is really fantastic. I will add Ustad Ji, Ustad Wajahat Khan Ji. So let me add it.
Wajahat bhai, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Hidayat bhai, so what will see you.
Welcome, Ustad Ji.
Thank you. So such a beautiful talk by Nishat bhai. He's so funny and spoke so beautifully. Wonderful.
So, Ustad Ji, we are up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ustad Ji, I can hear you.
Now I can hear you. Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. So we all are eager to listen from you as well. So if after this wonderful session from Ustad Nishat Khan Saheb, what are the things that you would like to know, any particular perspective you would ask to start with, or any music you would like us to play, Ustad Ji, and then what the way you want, we will go in that way.
I think we will just carry on. Thank you, first of all, for having me, Ram bhai and Hidayat bhai. So wonderful. It's so beautiful what you're doing. It's my father's anniversary. So may God bless his soul. And it's you've already covered so much. So I'll probably be repeating some things, but
But he is such an ocean, na Bajaj bhai, कि we can spend like एक घंटा हम लोग बात किए, it felt like a minute, at least to me.
सही बात है.
Felt like a minute, and I can't wait to hear your stories and your perspective, and you know, all of you all are such phenomenal musicians, and being it's such a, I mean, I feel so blessed that if you believe in past life or whatever karma or whatever you say, that we must have done something so amazing that we were able to be born into a family like this, and to have fathers that were such deep human beings, and such nice human beings, and that gave us so much of love and spirituality, and so much. So so hearing these stories and remembering our family through the music of, and as Irshad Bhai was saying, the legacy that you all are carrying, and the musicians that you that all of you all are. So it's so nice to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, these are doyens of Indian classical music. These are the doyens of sitar. They changed the landscape of Indian classical music, instrumental music for ever to come. And how do you squeeze talking about all of them within half an hour or within an hour? You know, it's so much to say. I mean, you can never stop. I mean, there's so much, so beautiful. He was Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb, my father Guru Ustad, he was the one of the last of that generation of the great legends of that generation. I mean, we lost almost everybody. Bismillah Khan Sahab, Bhim Singh ji, Kishori ji, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab. It was a whole era. And then Ustad Imrat Khan Sahab has also, you know, left us. Ab do चार ही रह गए हैं from that, you know, among the top performing great musicians of that level. You know, may Allah keep them well and bless them and keep them happy and healthy. We should cherish them, you know. So that's a whole era, whole generation gone. And sorry, it's okay. Yep. So it's I mean, coming back to Ustad Imrat Khan Sahab, what he did to the Sitar and Surbahar and his contributions are almost like immeasurable. Be it the development of the sitar, you know, the development of the gaiki ang, the jod ang, his tans, his kamaks, his compositions, you know, and the kind of rags, lahkari, tals he brought to the gharana, the lahkari, and playing different tals, and the kind of rags that he you know, brought in, you know, and so on. It's just it's a legacy, you know, about what he's left, and we just have to cherish all this. You see, our gharana, this my family, Ustad Imdad Khani Itawa Gharana, this is Surbahar and Sitar, both. It's a gharana of both Sitar and Surbahar. So Hidayat Khan Sahab played sitar, and he played to such an extent, and Hidayat Khan Sahab is very much credited with the Gaikiyang, and rightly so, because Gaikiyang was seeded by his father, Ustad Nishat Khan Sahab, already. But then what Hidayat Khan Sahab did with the Gaikiyang, and where he took it and totally changed the landscape, and today everybody is, you know, following that. But Imrat Khan Sahab brought his own Gaikiyang along with that, and all the research of Hidayat Khan Sahab, you see, about 30, 40 years of their life, they were together and they played together. Inayat Khan Sahab, their father, died when my father, Ustad Imrat Khan Sahab, was very young. He was 3 or 4 years old. But at that time, Vilayat Khan Sahab was already almost like a superstar. He was a child prodigy. He was already famous. He had already recorded a disc, you know. So you can imagine his and so among all his peers, I mean, he was well maybe decades in advance, you know, because he started already performing with my grandfather on stage from a very, very young age. So sitar was secure and it was still developing. I mean, he still developed it further. So Imrat Khan Sahab then went, so his first training was with his mother, who was a great vocalist. She was the daughter of Ustad Bandi Hasan Khan Sahab, great vocalist of his time. And she was very well learned and sang very well. But, you know, in our family, and that at that time, women didn't come much on stage. And she was in Pardha, you know, so she wouldn't want to come out. But she trained both the sons and my father also in singing. And then he had a lot of training. Well, of course, first of all, he had training with his brother, Ustad Wajahat Khan Sahab, from his brother, Ustad Wajahat Khan Sahab on sitar. And he adored Wajahat Khan Sahab. He loved him. And Wajahat Khan Sahab was almost like a father figure to him. And the love and bond that you were also talking about earlier was amazing. All his life, he spoke about it. And both of them, you know, spoke about it and said beautiful things. So, and then he took the talim of the Surbahar from his uncle, the great Ustad Wajahat Khan Sahab, who's a beautiful, amazing Surbahar player. But then he had also talim from his maternal grandfather and maternal uncle, Ustad Bandi Hasan Khan Sahab and Ustad Zinda Hasan Khan Sahab. But also he had training in Bombay from Ustad Khadim Husain Khan Sahab, you know, of Rampur. उनसे भी उन्होंने बहुत तालीम ली. तो उनकी बहुत गायकी अंग, वो उनकी गाने की बहुत तालीम रही. And all his life also from his childhood he was with vocalists. He spent a lot of time with Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, who used to just like stay stones throw from our house on Ustad Inayat Khan Avenue in Calcutta, Park Circus. So he spent a lot of time with Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, and his son, you know, Ustad Mudabbir Ali Khan Sahab, you know, the great singer, he was his buddy, you know. And Ustad Salamat Ali Khan Sahab, and when he came to London, Ustad Salamat Ali Khan Sahab used to come a lot, and they were buddies. And they spent, I mean, my childhood, I have heard such amazing nights and music of them just playing together. You know, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, Mudabbir Ali Khan Sahab's house, or my house. We used to have खाने बनते थे, एक बार उनकी वहाँ दावत हो रही है तो एक बार हमारे यहाँ दावत हो रही है, you know, things like that. Or Mudabbir Khan Sahab used to come to our house, you know, regularly and practice and sing. They used to play all the time together. And also he was a buddy with, you know, the Dagas, Ustad Fahimuddin Dagar Sahab, who also lived in Park Circus, very close to our house. And he used to come to our house all the time. So he was all the time, you know, to unki jo ho sara jo musical upbringing and research of Gaiki Ang was very unique. And then he brought the Surbahar Ang as well, a lot of Surbahar Ang to the sitar, which was also unique, and that reflected in his jor. So both these brothers are actually very important for the Gaiki Ang. Wajahat Khan Sahab, उनके जितने experiments होते थे, he used to do with my father, because, you know, for example, the way Gandhar Pancham tuning came into being is because there's all these episodes that, you know, I used to hear always my father saying, and, you know, discussing also Vilayat Khan Sahab, Papa was always his, you know, his like right-hand man, you know. So all these discussions and everything, my father used to go and stand by the door, and Vilayat Khan Sahab used to play. And they used to hear the sound and things like that. So Sara research पापा के साथ डिस्कशंस के साथ और उनके सजेशंस के साथ और उनके रजामंदी के साथ और उनके जॉइंटली ये सारा हुआ है, which Vilayat Khan Sahab then took it forward. And also the Jawari, the research of Jawari, his research of Jawari was amazing. Now Vilayat Khan Sahab had his own tone, but practically उनकी सारी जवारी तो पापा ही करते थे, you know, because Papa was actually doing practically for 20-30 years. Papa used to do all his jawaris because, you know, तो वो सारा research, it's very, very beautiful the way that entire era came up. And then there was a time when he then brought out, you know, that's the beauty of the two brothers, because they are like something we discussed last session as well, that, you know, they belong to one family and one gharana, but yet they are so unique and have their own amazing, beautiful styles. So that's how then they started with the Surbahar sitar duets, which Vilayat Khan Sahab pretty much wanted. उन्होंने बोला कि तुम इसको सुरबहार को तैयार करो तो हम लोग duet बजाएंगे. And her mother, their mother, Darima, बहुत चाहती थी कि पापा सुरबहार भी बजाएं. And she used to wrap the Surbahar in saris and travel with him to Wahid Khan Sahab. And Wahid Khan Sahab तो बहुत move करते रहते थे. You know, eventually he settled in Kalyan near Bombay. वहाँ पर जाके पापा ने उनसे सुरबहार की पूरी तालीम ली. और हमारे घराने में जिस हिसाब की सुरबहार की तालीम, it's an amazing you know, तालीम which you know, was coming down from Ustad Sahabdat Khan Sahab, you know, who invented the Surbahar from that time. And and then he, after the passing away of Hidayat Khan Sahab, Surbahar was like, of course, Wahid Khan Sahab had the know-how, and there were a few other artists who also had the Surbahar, but it was always almost like going into oblivion. So he single-handedly, Imrat Khan Sahab, he took the Surbahar almost from oblivion and put it on the world map of instrument.
No doubt. Kya baat hai?
You know, so he took it around the world, performed all over India, all over the world, at the most best venues, top venues, made sankro recordings and everything. There is he doesn't have any peer in that regard when it comes to Surbahar. You know, because I mean, there are so many instruments which actually died, like Sur Singar, Sur Saptak. You know, there are so many instruments that we've had in the Indian traditions which just died, and maybe Surbahar could have been one of those stories. You know, even though there were a few people, you know, playing, but you know, घर एक चीज होती है, घर में बैठ के बजाना और थोड़ा थोड़ा बजाना, थोड़ा तालीम देना, और you know, और एक उसको रिकॉर्डिंग्स करना, सारे कॉन्सर्ट्स में बजाना और सारी दुनिया में ले जाके इसको फैलाना. तो ये we owe a lot to Ustad Imrat Khan Sahab for that. And then coming back to the sitar, his contribution to the sitar, I mean, today's young generation and a lot of the contemporary sitar players, especially out of my gharana, perhaps are not aware of or are not acknowledging enough his contributions to the Gaiki Young and what he has done to the sitar itself. And, you know, or usko, you know, from the very 60s, early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, se jo unka bajane ka jo ek rukh, he had to play with Ustad Vilayat Khan, not only Surbahar but sitar as well. So Vilayat Khan Sahab was the king. You know, I mean, my God, his playing and, you know, his level of musicianship. So it was inevitable. I mean, he had to raise his game and, you know, and hold his own. I mean, it is amazing his तानकारी and उस तालीम से जो उनकी अपनी पर्सनल तालीम अपने भाई से, अपने अंकल, मैटरनल अंकल से, मैटरनल ग्रैंडफादर से और खादिम हुसैन खान साहब से और अपने रिसर्च से वो जो आई और वो उस अपना ही छाप.
आप सही क्या बात बोल रहे हैं. To be Ustad Inayat Khan Saheb's son.
Correct. जी.
And then to be Ustad Vilayat Khan Saheb's brother.
Amazing.
And then to be able to create an Ustad Imrat Khan himself. That in itself shows the capacity of his musicianship. You know, that kind of pressure and that kind of weight and undertaking, and yet be able to sort of make a mark. And what a mark! Not just a mark, what a mark! And leave this world with so much is just tremendous. Kya baat hai?
Absolutely, because he developed a particular technique, and his right hand, Surbahar bhi jate the, so his right hand was just so powerful. उनकी दाहिने हाथ का जो वजन था, you know, like एक example मैं आपको दूं, जैसे उस्ताद फैयाज खान साहब या उस्ताद बड़े गुलाम अली खान साहब, you know, if you listen to their singing, the voice was like so powerful that, you know, they can like shatter the glass, you know, but yet they can shatter your heart as well with the delicacy. तो ये इमरत खान साहब के वो हाथ में जब सितार था, वो इतना पावरफुल उनका राइट हैंड था कि उनको डायमेंशन, and then he could just go with such finesse of delicate strokes and tankari that, you know, it has such dimension. In fact, let's play something. I've got a nice clip for you. These are recording, very early recording, so maybe the sound quality might not be very good, but you know, I think we've lost Ram again. I think he's having internet problems here. So as soon as he comes in, so we'll play that recording. तो उनके जो अपनी जो तानकारी थी, गमक और फिरत और झूठ और this kind of things that he brought out, you know, himself with his, of course, with Khan Sahib and his talim as well. And so Ram, you play those, you know, clips. So these are very old recording, around 60, 62, 64 ki recording hai ye. So but you can hear the content of it, the quality, recording quality not good.
Ram bhai, I'm having a lot of audio and video issues over here. Is the broadcast, is it going clean or is there people complaining?
No, broadcast is perfect. I am having a internet connection problem. Unfortunately, today there is some some problem is happening at my end, but audience is being able to watch that.
There's no this thing, right? Yeah, because the recordings maybe jo Shri bajai thi, the first few minutes I couldn't hear anything, and then I could start hearing it afterwards. Or Wajahat bhai ka bhi na audio cut ke aa raha hai. So I just want to make sure that everyone else is getting it right.
No, audience is being able to listen. There is no complaint from audience side. Unfortunately, I have some internet issue today. So anyway, I will.
As long as the audience is happy.
Now, audience is happy. Yes, I will try to play the recording. Ustad ji, tell me which recording you want me to play now.
सितार की वो यमन बजाई, यमन और तिलक कामत का वो सुनाई, वो छोटे-छोटे clip हैं.
Okay.
A few minutes, but you know, just a small example. I mean,
in case my internet connection is unstable, there will be interruption. So then please continue the talk. My apologies for this, for the unstable internet connection today. It suddenly started some time back.
Amazing. 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 देख लो ये
Ustadji, should I play the Tilak Kamut also?
just a minute. Let's see. So I
Okay.
don't know how the connection. I cut off. Couldn't hear a little bit. Could you hear Hidayat bhai?
शुरुआत में नहीं सुनाई दे रहा था, but end में मेरे को फिर सुनाई दिया.
ओहो, तो उन्होंने कई बात उन्होंने बचाई हैं.
जी.
तो पता नहीं, I don't know what came out, but you see.
From audience, we hear that audio is good. There's feedback just we got.
अच्छा जी. तो
We are getting clear transmission. Yeah.
वो कटाव का काम और क्या लेफ्ट हैंड का सुभान अल्लाह, मतलब और एक्यूरेसी के साथ फिर सुभान अल्लाह क्या बात है.
और इसकी कंट्रोल, राइट हैंड की जो कंट्रोल उन्हें है वहाँ पे, और अच्छा तिलक कमोद बजाइए. ये भी थोड़ा सा एक छोटा सा है.
जी,
जरा
जी.
वॉल्यूम को थोड़ा हाई रखिएगा.
Okay.
Okay. क्या बात अब बताइए अब what can I say? There are no words there.
Absolutely no need actually.
Three octaves, you know, 3 octaves बिल्कुल जैसे मक्खन है, जैसे कोई बात ही नहीं है. और these are one particular kind of dance he's just developing, but there are so many kinds of dance he had. His when he went into gamak, his gamaks, his sapats, toots, this just incredible. So this is a kind of musicianship that was very much his own, you know. So ऐसा था.
क्या बात है. And बड़ी अच्छी बात आपने बोली वजाहत है कि this is not the entire repertoire. This is just one, like what we heard was just one genre of music in one little aspect of dance that he developed in both these recordings in one. वो कहाँ उसको लेके जाते हैं. निशात भाई भी यही बात बोल रहे थे कि हमारे घराने में तान पे जितनी बढ़त हुई है वो उसमें ये समझ में आ रहा है. क्या बात है.
बिल्कुल सुभान अल्लाह. और no, it's like an ocean. And you know, it's not like compose जो आजकल बहुत जो म्यूजिक और या लोग बजाते हैं, you know, but it's like compose A के बाद B के बाद C, ऐसा नहीं है. It's just coming out. It's just flowing and flowing. ये दोनों ये जो it's so beautiful. It's just flowing. And also you see उन्होंने घराने में जो उनकी जो वो एक नए विजन ऑफ राग्स भी लेके आए. जैसे he liked to play all those traditionally normally rags which हमारे जो घराने में बजता था, but he liked very technically difficult rags as well. So उनका he had a fascination of shadab and order rags as well, you know, the pentatonic, you know, rags. जैसे कलावती का बताया, गावती का बताया, you know, make iconic Durga. His iconic Durga and that composition is just this another iconic, you know, piece which he played. Saraswati, Durga, Gorakh Kalyan, इस किस्म के राग जो हमारे घराने में ज्यादा पहले नहीं बजते थे, you know, नहीं बजे, तो वो लेके आए. वो उसका अपने हिसाब से उन्होंने उसको परफॉर्म किया, एक रोमांटिक एंड स्पिरिचुअल और हैप्पी काइंड ऑफ एक इसमें एलिमेंट के साथ. और उनका एंड ऑफ कोर्स ताल हमारे यू नो इन माय फैमिली, इन माय घराना मेनली पहले ज्यादातर ध्रुपद धमाल या तीन ताल बजता था, बट ही ब्रॉट अ न्यू विजन ऑफ यू नो उनको फिर वो रूपक मेनली ट्रेडिशनल, ही लाइक टू प्ले मेन ट्रेडिशनल यू नो ताल्स. तो वो रूपक, झप ताल, एक ताल, वो सब भी वो बहुत बजाते थे. एंड हिज division, his mind was so amazingly brilliant in terms of, you know, his research on the division of the tal and the division of the beat. जो वो करते थे वो पहले हमारे घराने में कभी ऐसा इस किस्म का वो उस हिसाब के नहीं हुआ. You know, like his mathematical calculations of the tal and the beat जो वो करते थे. Of course, nothing to take away from Ustad Wajahat Khan Saheb. Ustad Wajahat Khan Saheb उनकी अपनी सोच थी, लेकिन फिर इमरत खान साहब की अपनी सोच थी, अपनी खूबसूरती से वो लेके आया, वो छंद वगैरह लेके आया, you know. और आज all sitar players, all India, in fact, they are all are playing those kind of things. But he was one of the real pioneers who started all this. कैसे एक एक तिहाइयाँ बना के और कैलकुलेशन साथ आमद की ताने वगैरह ला के ठीक हाफ बीट पहले या 1 बीट पहले, हाफ बीट 1 बीट लेटर, और फिर खत्म करके फिर वो बंदिश पकड़ना, ये सारा वो लेके आए, which was just amazingly beautiful. So so these are some of his contributions which are just so beautiful. Ji. Can you hear me all right?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Ram, can you hear me? Hello.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, I can't hear Ram bhai.
I can see that you're talking to me, but I can't. Your voice is coming all broken up. Ram bhai, can you hear me?
Can you hear over there? So basically, I don't know whether you heard me or what. Could you hear me, Hidayat bhai? Listeners को बहुत माफी चाहते हैं, and many apologies to the listeners for this technical flaw which we have. These are the beauties of the internet, but some of the drawbacks of the internet as well.
Now I can hear you, Wajahat bhai. Yes, lovely.
Okay, so I don't know how much you heard and where you heard me.
It doesn't matter. So I would love to know that जब वो तालीम करते थे,
जी,
तो उस तालीम में like there's such a progression in his music, right?
yeah.
That जब वो तालीम करते थे आपको and निशात भाई को, इरशाद भाई को, शफात भाई, all of you all and all the students and everyone, that उसका system that जब जैसे तानों की बात हो रही है, बढ़त की तानों की बात हो रही है, तो was there, if you can just elaborate a little bit and talk about that taaleem and how the system worked and how he gave concepts और उनके ideas क्या होते थे?
Well, taaleem was, he was very strict, first of all, in his taaleem, as Nishat bhai mentioned. And घर में जो एक माहौल था, वो बस बिल्कुल almost 24 hours round the clock गाने बजाने का माहौल रहता था. So either he is playing or one of us are playing or the students are playing, कोई भी आते थे, बस join in, sit in, and तालीम हो रही है, बजाना हो रहा है, तो उसमें एक तो वो जैसे personally मैं अगर बात करूँ तो मैं I started with singing. मैं पहले गाना ही गाता था, गाने की सारी तालीम होती थी पापा से और दादी माँ से भी मैंने बहुत सीखा. But when I took sarod, that was early teens, then I was already a full-fledged singer and sitar भी मैं बहुत अच्छा बजाता था उस वक्त. तो उस वक्त जब मैंने sarod लिया तो I had to literally, he made me literally start from scratch as if like a beginner. Because it was a big frustration for me because मैं तो सितार और गाना सब कुछ मैं immediately sarod में उतारना चाहता था, but technically I was not there at all at that time. So he just put me कि नहीं, बिल्कुल डा रा face the wall and इतनी बात करो. वो मुझे सुनते थे बहुत, बैठ के वो हमको सुनते रहते थे, because मैं अपने टेक्निक से अपने वो टूटा फूटा वो खुद बजाता रहता था सरोद में, वो बैठ के सुनते रहते थे, फिर उसको वो करेक्ट करते थे कि नहीं ये तो तुम सरोद में इस हिसाब से अगर तार में, बिकॉज जैसे हमारे घराने में सुरबहार की वो जो 4 स्ट्रिंग्स की जो का बाज है, वो हमारे घराने में तो बहुत, हमारे फैमिली में मेरे फादर एंड वो बहुत ज्यादा एडवांस्ड है वो सारा टेक्निक. तो उसको सरोद में कैसे उतार सकते हैं, सरोद की टेक्निक हिसाब से वो एक बहुत बड़ा सब्जेक्ट था. he was always teaching me, and we were exploring that, trying to bring it on the sarod. And then face the wall, and itne sargam hone chahiye, और 1000 sargam, 500 sargam, गिन के sargam, और time के हिसाब से time बंधा हुआ था. There was a particular time where different times we had different kind of trainings, but there was one particular time when he set a time of 6 o'clock. Come what might, 6 बजे सबको बैठना है, साज लेके अपने अपने कमरे में सब बैठते थे, या कभी कभी एक साथ बैठते थे अगर, तो बस वो चाहे जो भी हो रहा है सब छोड़ के 6 बजे बैठ जाना है. और फिर कोई फिनिशिंग टाइम नहीं था. वो फिनिशिंग टाइम 2 बजे भी हो सकते हैं, रात के सुबह के 4 के बजे हो सकते हैं, सुबह के 6 बजे हो सकते हैं. तो बीच में अगर खाने का ब्रेक हुआ तो वो छोटा सा ब्रेक होता था. और इस किस्म का कभी कभी there was a time वो बहुत ज्यादा तालीम था. Now I was the only person who actually stuck with with education. He pulled everybody out of school. कहने लगे नहीं, तुमको बस गाना बजाना करना है, बस वो सबको स्कूल से निकाल दिया. So this was his another very unique thing, which he did. Just he took everybody out of school. कि बस सितार बजाओ, वो गाना बजाओ, वो होगा. But my mother was very much after me कि नहीं बजा, तुमको बेटा कम से कम तुमको तो पढ़ना है, because I was good in education at that time. So I remember one particular episode where it was my examinations going on, and I was studying, and I used to studying in the dining room, so all my books were spread there. मैं बहुत टेंशन ले रहा था ये वो. तो वो ऊपर से आए, देखने लगे कि I'm sitting and studying. My books were lying there, and I had gone maybe to the bathroom or something. तो उन्होंने बुलाया मेरे को, वजाहत. पापा कहने लगी ये सब क्या है, मतलब क्योंकि टाइम हो गया था बजाने का. तो मैंने बोला कि पापा मैं जरा पढ़ा था, एग्जाम हो रहा है, कल. तुमने देखो वजाहत. These were his words, kind of. If you want to go to school, it is up to you. But once you come back home, I don't want to see books lying around. अब time हो गया, तुम बैठो, सरोड लेके बैठो. Oh my God! This was the kind of amazing, thing he had. And so फिर मैंने my final exams when I went into college, Queen Elizabeth Hall में मेरा concert यहाँ पे था, and of course that took most precedent over everything else. So I couldn't even do my final exam. मैंने 2 exams किए, फिर उसके बाद मैं वहाँ पे आ गया यहाँ पे, so music was always given first priority, और तालीम उसी हिसाब से हुई हमारी.
I have this very similar story. मैं 8th standard का एग्जाम का प्रिपेयर कर रहा था, और ऑब्वियसली पढ़ाई में कुछ हमारे खानदान में कोई भी बहुत आला नहीं है. So I was really having to work hard, and so Abba walks in and he looks at me and he says, "Why are you so pareshan?" I'm like, "I have an exam and I'm not prepared really, So he said, "देखो बेटा, पास हो जाना, नहीं तो अम्मा से चप्पल पड़ेगी. But करना तुम्हें क्या है? तार बजाना है ना? So concentrate on that." I mean, there was such a clarity of thought in these people that this is what needs to be done, and that has to be, in order to be a musician, you have to have single focus. Because music is not about technique, music is not just about how many compositions and how many rags, It has to be a part of your soul. And when you say stories that 24/7 there was music in the house,
absolutely,
that is the only way that it'll be in your soul, it'll be in your blood, it'll be in your bones.
And we were blessed with that. I mean, how many people can say like that? I mean, we were blessed with that kind of upbringing. हमारे यहाँ मतलब रात के Nishat bhai mentioned Satyajit Ray. We had a particular वो रात के 1 बजे 2 बजे आते थे. अब हम लोग रियाज कर, क्योंकि उनको मालूम है कि हम लोग बजा रहे हैं. वो रात के 1 बजे घंटी बज रही, कौन आया, वो आ गया. कभी कभी अपना फ्लास्क भी ले आते थे वो चाय का. तो वो बस हम लोग रात के 2 बजे वो आ रहे हैं और बैठ के गाना बजाना में सुनते थे. Or his friends were, very, I mean, they were all, everybody was invited. तो वो जब आके बस बैठ के गाना बजाना सुनते थे, वो he never liked to chat and have socializing. उनकी जितनी socializing थी सारे गाने बजाने वालों के साथ थी. As I mentioned, his friends, his buddies were all great vocalists, and they would all come home for dinner. गाना बजाना हो रहा है, रियाज हो रहा है, बस एक एक बंदिश की जा रही है, and I used to just sit and listen to that. That was the upbringing I came up with, and एक masters आते थे. One of my very fond memories I have for Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb, जब वो आते थे कलकत्ते, पंडित राधिका मोहन मित्र जी के मेरे इतने फॉन्ड मेमोरीज हैं. वो आते थे, मेरे को गोदी में बैठाते, वो आके रोते थे खाली, दादा को याद करते थे. तो ये इस किस्म के हमारे वो, और खाली गाना बजाना होता था बस. तो ये एक ऐसा टाइम गया है, वो it's just amazing, which then reflected in his music. That's how he did. One more thing I would like to actually mention here is about his contribution to popularizing Indian classical music around the world, because of course a lot of credit goes to Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, and rightly so, for what he did. But in England and Europe, it was mainly Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb, because the connection was going back to Dartington. Because when he used to come here from the early, I think 1961 is I think 56 was the first time he came, but 1961 से वो Edinburgh Festival का जो बहुत कामयाब कॉन्सर्ट हुआ, उसके बाद उन लोग जब पापा यहाँ आते थे, so there was Lord Elmhurst. This is also a very good history. Lord Elmhurst, who actually he established Dartington Hall, the Dartington College of Arts. This is a very small, beautiful town in Devon, southwest of England. And Elmhurst had been the manager of Rabindranath Tagore. And he saw how Tagore set up Shantiniketan. So he had a vision, and he wanted to create Shantiniketan in Dartington, of all places. And when he heard that and he saw that, association with Tagore and Ustad Inayat Khan Saheb. So when he heard that Ustad Inayat Khan Saheb's sons are coming to London, and and my father, he was well spoken in English, and he was, he could talk and teach well. He said, you need to come and teach in Dartington. So that is one of the first centers or places in the world, especially in England, Europe, certainly, where you could go study and learn Indian music, get some kind of qualifications and things like that. क्योंकि उसके पहले इंग्लैंड यूरोप में तो कुछ नहीं था. मेरे में ऑफ कोर्स उस्ताद अली अकबर खान साहब ने जाके सेटअप किया था, at a different time. But that was where, and still today, a lot of the many musicians who are who playing Indian music and who have set up centers and music societies and organizations around England, a lot of them have actually their origins from Dartington, because he set up a program. He used to teach, and फिर वहाँ पे वो बहुत सारे इंडिया के आर्टिस्टों को लाते थे. For example, he also got the great Kathak dancer Pandit Durgalal to come and teach there. Durgalal ji was an amazing dancer. He was a legend. He passed away very young.
Also a very good Pakhavaj player.
हाँ, बिल्कुल amazing Pakhavaj. In fact, तो जब the first ever Tagore festival जो हुआ था, वो भी Dartington में हुआ था.
अच्छा.
जहाँ पे पापा ने then at the Great Hall, I actually, at the 150th year of Tagore, they invited me. I went and performed in the Great Hall in Dartington, and I had been there in 1977, so I was playing there for, I think, after almost 30 years. So it was amazing. So वहाँ पे they put Papa's huge poster there. And so that whole tradition, so my father, he had composed this rag Gitanjali. So Inayat Khan Saheb had composed this song, Tumi Kamon Kore Gan Kuro He Guni Ami Obhak Hoy Shuni, which he spoke about in the last session, and he had dedicated it to Inayat Khan Saheb. after his concert in Calcutta.
Tagore had composed the song.
Ji. Tagore has composed a song, Tumi Kamon Kore Gan Karo He Guni Ami Obak Hoy Shuni. It's a very, very beautiful song which is a part of his book Gitanjali with his poems. And he had dedicated it to Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb.
Ji.
This was so Imrat Khan Saheb composed Rag Gitanjali, which was as a tribute to Tagore, and back. And so when I performed that rag as well, just about 8 years ago or so, they had this 150th year anniversary of Tagore. So that was the connection. And Dartington, then he got on, and then he set up a program, and then his students used to carry that program last for nearly 20 years. And after that, tab tak to sare England mein centers music ke ho gaye the. Obviously, Bhavan got established very well, and many other music schools in Birmingham, Manchester. Then who would travel to Dartington all the way, 4 hours from London and things like that. So that program got folded up. It lasted for nearly 20 years, and it was a beautiful, beautiful, program. And I remember he used to say, because he used to perform all over the world and come back to take classes in Dartington. He had this beautiful Mercedes, He used to drive down. During this time, for £1 a day, you could park your car at Heathrow Airport for £1 a day. तो वहां पे वो हीथ्रो एयरपोर्ट में पार्क करके चले जाते थे. अब वो पता नहीं फ्रांस या ब्राजील या कहीं चले गए या इंडिया चले गए, आके गाड़ी लेके वापस जाके अपनी क्लास लेते थे. So he took it very seriously. Right. So basically, coming to the point that he then took this very seriously, and then he was teaching here and popularized. He is the person who introduced Indian classical music to the BBC proms in Royal Albert Hall. He was the only musician who performed 3 times at the BBC proms in Albert Hall, 1971, 1976, and 1989. With me and my brothers, we did a 5.5-hour concert at Royal Albert Hall. So coming back to how he was very much instrumental in popularizing Indian music in the West as well. He had this vision, Nishat bhai mentioned about that George Harrison thing, but actually Brian Jones, who was the member of Rolling Stones, was his student as well. But what happened is that when he came back from India, and when he heard that Brian Jones came to India as well, and he was studying in India as well with Papa in Calcutta. But then Brian Jones died of a drug overdose. And that was like an eye-opening for Papa, as he says, because he said, ye to bilkul wrong association. Indian music has got nothing to do with pop music, nothing to do with drugs, hashish, and because that was the era of the 60s when Indian music started getting very much associated with pop culture and hashish and things which he really fought. He didn't have that kind of vision that Pandit Ravi Shankar ji had, because he thought Ravi Shankar ji ne jo popularized kiya through Beatles and things like that, it was in fact also a positive thing, because that brought out music to a whole load of music listeners who would otherwise not have heard music. So that way, it was very beautiful. But my father had a different kind of. He said, "कि नहीं, वो तो popular तो वैसे भी हो जाएगा, but वो pop से हमको कुछ करने का नहीं." And he stopped playing in rock and pop festivals, and he started, very importantly, a very important movement at that time. Okay, he said, "I'm going to perform only in classical festivals and in religious places," because he said कि classical music का एक devotional element है और वो सुरबाहर लेके आते थे. So he started playing in cathedrals and churches and everything. So Westminster Abbey, he had concerts at the Westminster Abbey. He had concerts He performed at the St. Paul's Cathedral in London, at Brussels Cathedral, so major landmarks. So these are very, very important landmarks, contributions of his, which people do not know in the West. So that is, that he became a superstar.
So, Ustadji, I got a chance to interact with one of his disciples in England, Mark, I think Mick Taylor. Mick Taylor. He was best. Yeah, he
Yes,
learned from him for
Mick
very long duration.
Of course, Mick Taylor played so beautiful sitar. Behind the curtain, you can never say that this is the British English person playing. His Mick Taylor, Francis Silkston, Francis Shepherd, William Desani, Alistair Dick, his students in England, they all played beautiful sitar.
He was a very gracious teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Mick Taylor also did concerts in India. He went to India so many times, and he always. Actually, I went to his last concert, Mick Taylor's. He unfortunately had very sadly suffered from very bad illness of cancer, and he passed away very sadly. But he, at his last concert, I was there. The way he was talking about my father and the love and respect, and all that was beautiful. All his students in America, in Japan, in the Far East, Europe, England, India. He was a great teacher and had beautiful.
Ustadji, 4 of his students from West are sending some tribute notes and videos for this memorial event. One of them is Nick Newfield. Then Todd Mosby, who who played Imrat guitar, and Mark. I can't spell his surname. I think Mark Deuce, something like that. So he with inspiration of Ustadji, he added the tarab pegs on the cello. So he with help of Ustadji, he invented an instrument. And Chris Stephens. So all these students from West, they are contributing to this memorial event also.
Bless them. I'm so sorry. I'm not being able to read the comments because they're coming really small on the screen. So you can just thank you for informing me. These are such beautiful. You see, this is another mark of my father, because in the Gharana, this is a very important thing. हमारे घराने में बहुत साज भजे भी और इन्वेंट भी हुए. Imdad Khan Saheb had also invented an instrument which went into oblivion. Inayat Khan Saheb also invented an instrument which was Sur Saptak, and he also recorded it. Kamaj, amazing. He played on it, and Inayat Khan Saheb recording of Kamaj. आप लोगों को मौका मिले, आप लोग YouTube में भी है वो beautiful, जिस हिसाब से गाया तो Imrat Khan Saheb was also very much his mind was very much he was an inventor as well. So he invented Imrat violin, which was a beautiful instrument which was his own, and he invented the Imrat guitar. Imrat guitar, not guitar. Guitar from sitar. That was it. So Imrat guitar ने बनाया था, which is guitar के ऊपर तो इतने experiments हैं और इतने लोगों ने बनाए हैं सितार के साथ मिला के, but what he did was, I think, amazing, because he's got frets on it, he's got tarabs on it, chikari on it, and you can pull means on the guitar, which is a feat not achieved by anything. So it's so beautiful, and his students taught, for example, he plays beautifully and things like that. So यहाँ पे एक उनकी ये भी बहुत वो है, क्योंकि उन्होंने inventions भी बहुत किए. उनकी जो सोच ताल के ऊपर, लहकारी के ऊपर, तानू and everything, his alap, the way he did his alap was beautiful. I mean, these are oceans we're talking about, And of course, Nishat mentioned the tabla player he introduced, so many tabla players, and brought so many tabla players to the West. So where do we stop? Where do we stop? Sab theek ja raha hai. I hope you can all listen to me well. आवाज सही आ रही है?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is very, very nice. We can hear you very properly.
हिदायत भाई, आपको आवाज आ रही है?
एकदम आ रही है. I'm just so enjoying listening के और सारी पुरानी बातें और it's so nice to reflect back and remember our elders and spend a morning or an evening depending where you are talking about sir. जब उनका म्यूजिक भी सुन रहे थे एक फीलिंग आती है कि regardless of कौन सा घराना कौन आर्टिस्ट क्या, it's such a beautiful world.
Yeah,
it is such a beautiful world to be in music and और इतनी और उनकी compositions का सोच मुख्तलिफ तरीके से जो विलंबित की हैं वो उस एक मोड में चलती हैं, जो दुरत की हैं वो जरा अलग मिजाज से चलती हैं. And uniqueness to him also I found which is very interesting is that कि सुरबहार में जब वो बजाते थे तो एक इतना true to the सुरबहार, true to the emotion of the सुरबहार, true to the dynamics of the सुरबहार और उसकी spirituality और उसमें जिस तरीके से गंभीर काम करना, and सितार में उनके mischievousness भी था और बोल का कटाव भी था. An amazing transformation of वज़न that he would play a surbahar with and also a sitar with. It was amazing how he could so quickly do it because as sitar players and instrumentalists we've all played surbahar and sitar, हम लोग के घराने का है, but एक dynamic जरा change में it's very hard to just switch over and वो मिजाज switch करना and everything. There's so many things to talk about. So many things.
You see, the thing is, he never chased popularity, which is something so beautiful. He never chased the public and concerts. He never was calling people for organizations and things like that to a concert group. And he was a little bit, annoyed because India may, of course, that was an era of Ustad Hidayat Khan Saheb, the great Hidayat Khan Saheb, who was the superstar. And then came Ustad Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, who was a superstar in it. And so he was a little annoyed about this, this so-called all the time rivalry between these two giants. They never had any rivalry between themselves. These two great artists.
I mean, I have such fond memories of Panditji coming home and everything. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they both had the utmost respect and love for each other. And anyway, the Jobi rivalry that was also sorted out, in that particular concert. But the media and the people, they always cared on that. So whenever it would, and his earning. And through the Dartington College, उनको एक नई avenue मिल गई in the West. तो उनकी जो जितने वो उनकी earning then started in the West also. So when he came, he always made a thing that I'm always going to spend, come what not, I'm going to spend 6 months in India. So 6 महीने India, 6 महीने West में रहते थे वो, ऐसे करते थे. But in India, very often, as he would say, the phone would hardly ring, So he would not call organizations, concert and things like that. There came a time, and also he was very serious with the Surbahar. You see, today, in the last 10 years, you will see the YouTube, for example, and suddenly so many Surbahar players have sprung up. जिसने जिंदगी में भी कभी सुरबहार जाया था उठा तो वो भी कोई भी रिकॉर्डिंग करके सुरबहार बजा दे रहे हैं दिया सुरबहार players. But just imagine that time during the 60s and during the 70s when there were no Surbahar players or hardly very few Surbahar players at all, and he put his foot down कि नहीं मैं सुरबहार बजाऊंगा और चाहे जैसे भी ऑडियंस है, मैं तो पूरा आलाप करूंगा। एक एक डेढ़ घंटे का बैठ के वो सुरबहार में आलाप करते थे और जो काम करते थे, कम व्हाट माइट, यू नो। तो ही डिडंट चेस पॉपुलैरिटी। अब वो अगर वो बजाएंगे, वो हमको इनवाइट करोगे तो हम आएंगे, आपको सुनना है तो हम
There was
बजाएंगे।
a dignity with,
हाँ,
you know, that's it. वो generation चीज है, उस generation के जो लोग थे, they
जी,
carried themselves, they carried their music with a dignity and a reverence.
जी,
और
जी,
you
absolutely.
know, आजकल लोग कहते हैं कि ऑडियंस खराब है और आलाप नहीं सुनती है. I
सही
disagree with that.
बात।
Artist में वो वजन होना चाहिए. The artist has to have that caliber that they can grasp you. And these
Absolutely.
artists, the reason why people heard them playing alap for an hour and a half, is because there was musicality. It wasn't wasted time. There was so much. You couldn't get up. You couldn't move. I mean, we heard that Shri of Papa's, and we couldn't move. Rambhai was trying to like, okay, where should I press stop? But you couldn't. I mean, once it starts, it's hypnotic. It just grabs you and takes you. And the ocean of thought that comes out after phrase after phrase after phrase. Kya baat hai, Subhanallah.
I mean, with all due respect to all artists and everything, I if I've said anything which might upset anybody, my party, but you know, these are oceans and such kind of musicians who need to be acknowledged. And you know, he was happy with the love and respect that he got in the musical fraternity, you know, from all the musicians, सारे musicians उनको बहुत प्यार मोहब्बत करते थे. I mean, call for his Padma Bhushan was going on from 1980s, you know. So तो बहुत सारे आर्टिस्टों ने भी, musicians ने भी बोला था कि इमरत खान साहब is a artist who should be given Padma Bhushan or Padma Vibhushan, कि उनके calls हो रहे थे from many, you know, sources, but you know, उनको उस हिसाब से कभी recognize किया. And then 1 or 2 years before he died at the age of 84 and 82, you know, they offered him a Padma Shri. It was still a great honor, but he said, thank you very much, but no, thank you very much. It's coming too little too late. That's what he said. Because he saw all his contemporaries and a lot of other musicians do maybe he felt, you know, anyways, that's totally different discussion. But
if I can you know say, तब जब उनको पद्मश्री दिया गया, in fact his disciples should have been given that award.
Exactly.
When he was given Padma Shri, his disciples should have been given.
So, no, but a lot of the musicians, they got the Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan. A lot of them who, जो उनके इंस्पिरेशन पे, इनके चाल पे और इनके आइडियाज पे जिन्होंने ये काम किया और उनको इज्जत करते हैं, और आप इनको एक्नॉलेज नहीं कर रहे हैं. You know, this was I think one of the injustices. But anyway, everybody
so
has
as Ustad Hidayat Khan Saheb said once, wrong award to wrong people in wrong time. So that has been the story in India throughout. So
yeah, he said that once. Yeah.
Honestly, but honestly, I mean, these who we sit over here and we're remembering these great legends with respect and reverence. But आप बताइए कौन है जो इनको critique कर सकता है, या कौन है जो इनको award दे सकता है? I mean, they're way above these things, and they lived way above these things, and their music was way above this.
The award is awarded when the award is given to them. The award itself is awarded, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You see, he got the Sangeet Natak Academy Award, which was so beautiful. He got the Ustad Hafiz Ali Award by none other than the great Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb, which was, you know, and he got all the, as he said, all the awards and honors from all his listeners and musicians of India anyway, you know, like that. So he was never chasing all that, everything. Coming to, you know, just a musician, for example, You know, we were talking about this composition. Shabida mentioned about the Gauti composition. You know who pointed that out? It was actually in my last meeting with the great Ustad Salamat Ali Khan Saheb in London. Salamat Ali Khan Saheb was just praising my father, like unko yaad kar rahe the, unko bahut unko salam dena, and this and that. He's the great part. And he was praising my father's Gauti की बात हो रही थी. And he said कि you know बेटा तुमको मालूम है ना वो जो बंदिश है तुम्हारे वालिद की, वो that is the smallest bandish in Indian music. So for me it was such a great thing, because अब सलामत अली खान साहब ऐसी बात बोल रहे हैं, so you know it was,
उससे बड़ा क्या अवार्ड हो सकता है?
उससे और क्या अवार्ड हो सकता है जब इतने बड़े बड़े कलाकार और ऐसे ऐसे लोग. One of the most amazing conversation with श्रीमती किशोरी जी को मुझे याद है, जो उन्होंने जो जैसी जैसी पिताजी लिखी थी, you know, और and you know, so these discussions when I would come and tell my father, that's what would give him the strength, because he knew कि सारे गाने बजाने वाले, you know, and at the end of the day his, like Nishad rightly mentioned this also, कि whenever he was playing and all these compositions he had this कि you know कि भैया सुनेंगे इसको, भैया खुश होंगे. तो वो जो composition बनाने थे, you know, his composition, there's a composition of his राग मारवा, जो उन्होंने वो उनकी बहुत एक मार्के की famous composition है. Vilayat Khan Saheb performed that composition Marwa about a few years before he passed away. So that when my father heard the recording, it was like for him, you know, कि इससे बड़ा क्या उनके लिए वो हो सकता है, because this love and affection, you know, they both had against दुनिया जो भी बोले, हम तो कुछ नहीं बोलेगा. You know that Bollywood.
I've grown up with Wajahat bhai, just hearing जब भी पापा का जिक्र होए, जब भी अब्बा पुरानी बातें याद करें, there is always so much of love, there's so much of reverence, there's so much of affection. There were such good memories there. I honestly don't remember any other kind of conversation in the house, whether it was म्यूजिक के बारे में बात हो रही है या पर्सनल बातें हो रही हैं या रियाज. आई मीन रियाज को तो हम लोगों को हमेशा से एग्जांपल, हमेशा रियाज का जिक्र होता था तो हमेशा एक ही इंसान का एग्जांपल देते थे, पापा का. यानी कि जिस तरीके का उन्होंने रियाज किया है कि हम लोग के जो खानदान में जो रियाज मशहूर है, फ्रॉम इमदाद खान साहब, फ्रॉम इनायत खान साहब, दैट इज उनका रियाज का तो सुभान अल्लाह, क्या बात है.
और ये उन्होंने मेंटेन किया until end of his life. One more thing I would like to mention here is an amazing, unique thing. You know, he had heart surgery, kind of. He had a stint, but stint कहते हैं ना उसको, in his
stints.
Yeah. So the doctor and the doctor was remembering this story when I went, you know, just before his death. The same doctor was there, you know, in the nursing home, and we were talking about this, and he reminded me that. So he had this operation, and the doctor said, look, Ustad ji, you need to have 1 month of full rest, bedridden. He said, 1 महीना आपको बेड में रहना है. From the 2nd month, I'm going to put you into a rehabilitation program. I'm going to put you, you know, center there. My father said, okay, sure, thank you so much. And he came back from the hospital, and believe me, next week he was on stage performing a concert, because he had a concert in St. Louis where he was presenting his students. And he came out of and when his doctor heard this, he freaked out. He said, how is it, you know, physically possible? You know, so he got that strength, and he came on stage. YouTube maybe have that he's actually sitting and playing with his students, you know. Nobody knows that he was coming from a heart surgery. So that was the vigor he had. And when he would come to London, or when he will come to Calcutta, when we will go to St. Louis, he would put us to shame कि भाई हर बात बजा दिए रहे हैं, लेकिन बैठो ये एक एक बंदिशें आ रही हैं, एक एक बातें आ रही हैं, सो बस ऐसे लोग अब कहाँ होते हैं यार. Bless him, may Allah bless his soul. I think it's about time if we hear a little bit of Surbahar, it'll be great. So this is Rag Asavri I have chosen. And of course, it's very difficult, like you mentioned, where to stop. So we just said to chota clip karke, just to make us a few minutes, of Asavri. We have to stop in the middle of it, but gives you an idea of his spirituality and technique and beautiful playing. क्या तरह मिला ये.
Is it audible properly?
Yes.
Okay.
I heard it. Yeah.
Subhanallah.
इसके ऊपर अब क्या बात करें? I mean, there's nothing to talk, after this. And Surbahar is such a difficult instrument, and the kind of things he's doing there, people who know, who play, I mean, they would know, of course. But I think it might be good to leave it on that tone with this music in the ears. Can you hear me?
जी. Subhanallah.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. I think we've.
I think Rambhai has got some technical. He's having internet problems. I think.
Yeah. तो बस.
वजाहत भाई क्या मतलब एक तो सिलसिला काम में और क्लैरिटी ऑफ थॉट सिलसिला और जब जहाँ वजन और क्लैरिटी जहाँ पे दिल आए तो वो किस वॉल्यूम से आए और किस वॉल्यूम से सबड्यूड हो जाए. लाइक दिस जस्ट
सही बात.
एक ये 5 मिनट के पीस ऑफ म्यूजिक पे इंसान थीसिस कर सकता है और अपनी एक्चुअली ये 5 मिनट का पीस ऑफ म्यूजिक कैन बी इंसान की पूरी जिंदगी की तालीम है.
बेशक सही बात. और may Allah bless his soul and Hidayat Khan Saheb, Imrat Khan Saheb, and all the great masters, Allah bless them, So these are such amazing artists. We should cherish their history. They are our rich history of Indian classical music, which doesn't have another field in the world today. Such tradition. Mumbai, are you back?
Yeah, I am back, and with this wonderful note, we would like to, from ICMC, would like to thank. Thank will be very less compared to what you all have shared and what insight and experience you have shared. So my apologies for the bad internet connection today, which we never predicted. So yeah, with this note, if we can conclude this wonderful first day of Ustad Imrat Khan Saheb memorial session with all your permission.
Thank you so much.
Rambhai, thank you so much for making this possible and for giving all of us an opportunity to hear such wonderful stories and insight and inspirational legacies that we're getting to hear about. Everything that that Wajahat Bhai and Nishat Bhai both said today, and the discussions that we had today has so much more depth and meaning to it. Like जो ये 5 मिनट का हम लोगों ने लास्ट पीस सुना ना, ये एक्चुअली एक आर्टिस्ट के लिए जिंदगी भर की तालीम है. तो आप जो लोग भी ये सुनेंगे, especially students, music students, please listen to this and really imbibe this information because it's just there's no value that you can put on this.
ये तो मेरे जैसे स्टूडेंट्स लोगों के लिए तालीम है. ये हम लोगों जैसे जो सितार स्टूडेंट्स जो है तालीम है
एकदम
2.5 घंटे का.
Absolutely.
अपने आप सब इतनी अच्छा काम भी कर रहे हैं. Rambhai, thank you very much for all your wonderful work that you're doing. Hidayat, thank you very much, and very warm welcome and thank you to all our listeners. And बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
प्रणाम.